Don't you dare touch him. Her voice shook. Her hands shook. Everything about Mia Turner shook except her eyes. Those were locked, burning on the most dangerous man in the city, who was sitting perfectly still, with her 15-month-old son balanced on his knee like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The baby laughed. And Rex Malone, the man, men wept before begging for mercy, the man whose name alone cleared rooms, looked down at that child and felt something crack open inside his chest that he hadn't known was still there. If this story already has you feeling something, hit that subscribe button right now and follow this story all the way to the end, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Nobody ever really knew how Mia Turner ended up at the Malone estate. That was the thing about desperate people. They didn't arrive with a story anyone wanted to hear. They arrived with their shoes worn through at the heel and a lie ready on their lips and a prayer so old and so worn it had lost its words. Mia arrived on a Tuesday morning in March carrying a duffel bag on one shoulder and a resume she had typed at the public library 2 nights before on a borrowed computer while Leo slept in his stroller beside her. She had listed 3 references she prayed no one would actually call. She had listed her last job as a housekeeper for a family in Bridgeport. That much was true. What she had not listed was why she had left. The woman who interviewed her was named Carla. Mid-50s, silver hair pinned back tight, eyes that had seen every kind of lie a human being could tell and had cataloged them all in alphabetical order. Carla looked at Mia's resume for exactly 4 seconds, then looked up at Mia, then back down at the resume. "You have a gap," Carla said. 8 months. "I had a family matter," Mia said. "What kind of family matter?" "Personal." Carla tapped the resume once against the desk. "This is a large estate. Mr. Malone requires discretion above all other things. Are you discreet, Miss Turner?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you reliable?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you going to bring drama into my house?" Mia looked her straight in the eye. "No, ma'am." That was the first real lie, not the third reference, not the gap in employment. The lie was that she believed, even for 1 second, that she could walk into a house like this and leave drama outside the gate. Carla hired her on the spot. Minimum wage, 6 days a week. Live-in quarters for estate staff in the East Basement wing. No guests. Mia shook the woman's hand and thanked her and did not say a single word about Leo. The staff quarters had a lock on the inside. That was the first thing Mia checked when Carla showed her the room. A deadbolt solid original hardware. She pressed her thumb against it while Carla talked about laundry schedules, and she exhaled slowly through her nose. A lock. An actual lock on the door. She hadn't slept behind a locked door in 8 months. That night after Carla had gone and the hallway had gone quiet, Mia walked 3 blocks to the bus station where she had left Leo with a woman named Donna, a retired school teacher who worked part-time at a community shelter and who had been helping Mia for the last 2 weeks. Donna had Leo in her arms when Mia arrived. He was awake, eyes wide, gnawing on the ear of a stuffed rabbit. "He was good," Donna said. "He always is." Mia took Leo and held him against her chest and didn't say anything for a moment. "You sure about that?" Donna asked. "You know who that house belongs to?" "I know." "Mia." "I know, Donna." She pressed her face into Leo's hair. He smelled like baby shampoo and something sweet, something that was just him, that she could never describe to anyone but that she would have recognized in a room of 1,000 children. "I don't have another option right now. The shelter is full. The apartment I applied for won't come through for another 6 weeks. Tommy knows where every shelter in this city is. He knows people who work at most of them." She pulled back enough to look at Donna's face. "He doesn't know where Rex Malone's house is. Nobody does. That's the point." Donna pressed her lips together. "If Rex Malone finds out there's a baby living in his staff quarters, he won't. If he does, he won't," Mia said. "I won't let that happen." She walked back to the estate with Leo tucked under one arm and his bag over the other shoulder, and she told herself every step of the way that she was doing the right thing, that this was temporary, that in 6 weeks she would have enough saved for the first and last month's rent on the apartment, and she and Leo would be gone before anyone ever knew he was there. She told herself that. She kept telling herself that. She told herself that right up until the morning she carried Leo down the hallway at 5:45 a.m. and nearly walked directly into Carla. Carla didn't say anything at first. She stood in the hallway with a clipboard pressed to her chest, and she looked at Mia, and then at Leo, and then at Mia again. Leo looked at Carla. He grabbed Mia's collar with one fist. "Miss Turner," Carla said very quietly, "I can explain. You told me no guests. He's not a guest. He's my son." Mia's voice was steady. She had rehearsed this conversation in her head 50 times. She had prepared for every version of it. "He's 15 months old. He doesn't make noise. He doesn't leave the room unless I'm carrying him. He won't be any trouble, I promise you. No one will ever know." "I know," Carla said. "Carla, please." This was not in the rehearsal. The please came out before she could stop it, cracked and honest and ugly. "Please, I have nowhere to go. I am not asking you to bend the rules forever. I am asking you for 6 weeks. I will be gone in 6 weeks. He is not loud. He is not trouble. He sleeps through the night. He is a good baby. He is a really, really good baby. And I don't have anywhere." "Stop!" Carla's voice was sharp, not cruel, sharp the way a surgical tool is sharp, designed to cut clean. Mia stopped. Carla looked at Leo for a long moment. Leo looked back at her with enormous brown eyes and then reached one hand out toward her, fingers spread wide, the way babies reach for anything that seems interesting. Something moved across Carla's face that she locked down immediately. "You will keep him in the quarters during work hours," Carla said. "You will use the back entrance only. You will tell no one, and I mean no one, that this child is here. If anyone asks, you are watching a neighbor's baby for the afternoon. If Mr. Malone or any of his associates are on the property, the child does not exist. Do you understand me?" Mia stared at her. "Do you understand me, Miss Turner?" "Yes," Mia whispered. "Yes, I understand. Thank you." Carla turned and walked back down the hallway. She did not look at Leo again, but Mia saw her hand just for a second reach out and brush the wall as she turned the corner, like she needed something solid to hold on to. The first 2 weeks were almost peaceful. Peaceful in the way that the moment before a storm is peaceful, where the air goes so still it feels like the world is holding its breath. Mia learned the rhythms of the house. She learned which hallways to avoid and when. She learned which of the other staff asked questions and which ones kept their heads down. She learned that the east wing where she slept was the quietest part of the estate, and that no one from the main house came that far unless they had a reason. She learned that Rex Malone was almost never home before 8 p.m. She learned the sound of his car in the driveway. A black SUV, the engine low and heavy. She learned to listen for it from the room while Leo played on the blanket she spread across the floor, surrounded by the small collection of soft toys she had carried from the shelter, worn and secondhand and loved half to pieces. She learned that when the house shifted, when the energy changed, when the men who worked security straightened up and stopped talking, and the whole estate went taut as a wire, that meant Rex was inside. She had not seen him, not once in 2 weeks. He was a presence more than a person, felt through walls and heard through floors, a weight that changed the atmosphere of the entire building just by being in it. She was fine with that. She intended to keep it exactly that way. Then Leo learned to open doors. It happened so fast she didn't even understand it at first. She had been in the upstairs hallway gathering linens from the service closet, and she had put Leo down for what she estimated was 3 minutes. The door to the quarters was closed. He was in the middle of the blanket. She had checked the latch twice, and she turned around and he was gone. Not gone from the room. The door to the quarters was open. The hallway was empty. Her heart stopped. She left the linens where they were. She moved down the hallway fast, not running, because running made noise, and noise drew attention, and the one thing she could not have right now was attention. She checked the back stairwell, empty. She checked the laundry room, empty. She pushed open the door to the main corridor, and that was when she heard a sound she had been praying she would not hear. Voices, male voices. From behind the double doors at the end of the corridor, the ones that led to what Carla had called the conference room, and what everyone else on staff called the room where you never ever went when those doors were closed. Those doors were closed right now. And the sound she heard was not just voices. It was Leo. His little laugh, the one he made when something surprised him, a short, delighted sound like a bell struck once. Mia didn't breathe. She moved. She was at the doors in 4 steps, and she was pushing one open, and she was inside before the thought had fully formed in her mind, and what she saw stopped her so completely that for one full second she forgot everything, forgot the fear, forgot the plan, forgot every careful calculation she had made over the past 2 weeks. There were 9 men in the room. 8 of them were on their feet. 6 of them had their hands moving toward weapons they were not yet drawing. Their faces were arranged in expressions that ranged from shock to fury to cold, flat threat. And at the head of the table sat Rex Malone. She knew him immediately. Not from a photograph she had avoided looking for photographs, but from the way the room organized itself around him, the way every other person in that space was oriented toward him, the way plants turned toward light, or the way iron filings arranged themselves around a magnet. He was bigger than she had expected. Broader, his face was not what she would have called handsome, but it was the kind of face that had been shaped by hard things into something that was more than handsome, something defined and unignorable. His eyes were dark. They were looking directly at her. And on his knee, perched on his knee, as if he had been placed there by an invisible, cheerful hand, was Leo. Ducky pajamas, bare feet, one fist wrapped around Rex Malone's thumb. Leo looked at Mia. He grinned. Rex Malone did not grin. He did not move. He sat with that child on his knee and his eyes on Mia's face, and the entire room waited. "Don't," Rex said. His voice was quiet. He wasn't talking to Mia. The men who had been reaching for weapons went still. "Whose is this?" He looked down at Leo for a moment, then back up at Mia. It was not a gentle question. It was the kind of question that meant he already suspected the answer and was giving her one chance to confirm it before he drew his own conclusions. Mia walked forward. Her legs were working independently of her brain, which had gone blank and cold and silent. She reached the table. She reached for Leo. "Mine," she said. "He's mine. He's my son. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know how he got out. I had the door. His name." She stopped reaching. She straightened. "Leo," she said. Rex looked at Leo again. Leo was still holding his thumb. He had added his second hand now, wrapping both small fists around Rex's thumb and pulling it toward his mouth with the focused, single-minded intensity of a child who has found something interesting. Something happened in Rex's face. She couldn't name it. It was too brief, too contained, too immediately locked back down behind the wall of whatever it was that men like him built between themselves and the rest of the world. But she saw it. She knew she saw it because her own chest responded to it, some involuntary recognition, the way you recognize a note of music you haven't heard in years. "Which of my staff are you?" he said. "Mia Turner. I've been here 2 weeks. I clean the east wing and the upper floors." "Carla hired you." "Yes." "Does Carla know about the child?" A beat. One beat. She could lie. She thought about lying. She looked at the 8 men standing around the table and thought very carefully about the cost of being caught in a lie in this room in front of this man right now. "Yeah," she said. A sound from somewhere at the table, not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff. Rex's eyes moved once briefly to the source of the sound, and the sound stopped. "Everyone out," Rex said. Nobody moved for exactly 1 second, then everybody moved. The men filed out with the particular efficiency of people who had learned that hesitation was a form of argument, and argument had consequences. One man, tall shaved head, a scar running from his left ear to his jaw, was paused at the door. "Rex, I said out Danny." Danny looked at Mia. His eyes were not warm. "I'll be right outside," he said, and she understood that this was not said to Rex. Then the door closed, and it was the 3 of them, Mia and Rex and Leo, who had successfully gotten Rex's thumb into his mouth and was now regarding Mia with the calm, satisfied expression of a child who has won something. Rex looked down at Leo. He did not remove his thumb. "Running from something," he said. She opened her mouth. "Don't answer that fast," he said. "Fast answers mean rehearsed answers." She closed her mouth. She counted 3 seconds. Then she said, "Yes." "From who?" "My ex, Tommy Hayes." Not a flicker of recognition. Or if there was one, he hid it better than she could detect. "Where is he now?" "I don't know. That's why I'm here. That's why I—" She stopped. She started again more carefully. "I needed somewhere he wouldn't think to look. I needed time. 6 weeks, that was all I was asking for. 6 weeks, and I would have had enough for an apartment, and we would have been gone, and nobody would have ever. Who does he run with? The question landed strange. Not like a question about her past, like a question about a map, a territory, something tactical. She hesitated. Miss Turner. His voice hadn't changed, hadn't risen, hadn't sharpened, but the quality of it shifted in a way that made the hair on her arms stand up. I'm going to find out regardless. How fast that happens depends on how much time you decide to waste right now. The Falcones, she said. The room felt different after she said it. She could not have explained how or why. Rex hadn't moved. His expression hadn't changed. But something in the air between them changed some atmospheric pressure, and she had the sudden and terrifying certainty that she had just handed him a piece of information that meant something far larger than she understood. Leo let go of his thumb and looked up at Rex's face. Then Leo did the thing he did when he decided someone was worth his attention. He reached up with both hands, grabbed the front of Rex's shirt, and pulled himself to standing on Rex's knee and looked Rex directly in the face from a distance of approximately 6 inches. Rex looked back at him. Day, Leo said. It meant nothing. He said it to mailboxes and ceiling fans and the stuffed rabbit. It was a sound he made, not a word he knew. But the sound of it in that room, in that silence, did something to the air that Mia felt in her sternum. Rex put one large hand carefully, deliberately, with more care than she would have expected, against Leo's back, steadying him, keeping him from toppling forward. He's how old? Rex said. His voice was different. She couldn't say how, just different. 15 months. Rex nodded once. Then he looked up at her, and the wall was back solid and impenetrable, and his voice was flat and businesslike. You're not leaving, he said. I'm sorry. You're not leaving the estate, not tonight, probably not tomorrow. He set Leo back down on the table gently with the confidence of someone who had held children before some long-ago version of this man who had existed before whatever had made him into this. Leo grabbed the edge of a leather folder and began pulling it toward himself. Rex did not stop him. If you're connected to the Falcones even by proximity, then your presence here is already a security issue. If Tommy Hayes is looking for you, he'll eventually look in the direction of anyone you've been in contact with, and that means this house. Which means I need to know exactly what he knows and exactly what you know and exactly how long I have before this becomes a problem I have to solve in a way that will be bad for everyone. Mia stared at him. You're keeping me here. I'm keeping you safe. There's a difference. He stood. He was very tall. She had not fully registered how tall until he was standing. Carla will move you to the East Wing. Proper suite, not staff quarters. The child will have a room. He moved toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. And Miss Turner. Yes. He turned just enough to look at her over his shoulder. The next time you lie to someone in my house by omission, he said, do it better. Then he opened the door and walked out, and she was left standing at the conference table with Leo, who had successfully opened the leather folder and was now attempting to eat what appeared to be a very important document. She stood there for a long odd time after he left. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. Outside the windows, she could hear traffic, distant and ordinary, the city going about its business with no knowledge of the fact that somewhere inside this building, a 15-month-old boy had just wandered into the orbit of one of the most dangerous men in the state and come out the other side with both hands full and a grin on his face. She thought about Tommy, about the last time she had seen his face, not angry, which was the version of Tommy that most people knew about, but the other version, the one that was almost worse because it was quieter. The version that said very calmly that she could leave if she wanted to, but he knew where her mother lived and he knew where her sister worked, and she should think carefully about what leaving would cost. She had thought carefully. She had thought for 3 more months while Leo grew from a newborn to something that laughed and reached and pulled himself up on furniture and said "da" to ceiling fans. And then one morning she had packed the duffel bag while Tommy was at a meeting she wasn't supposed to know about, and she had walked out and she had not stopped walking. She had ended up here. She picked Leo up off the table. He was still holding the document. She carefully extracted it from his grip, set it back on the table, and looked at the damage, a wet, enthusiastic corner where his mouth had been. She smoothed it out as best she could. She thought about apologizing to it. She almost laughed. Okay, she said quietly to Leo to herself to the room. Okay. Leo put his hand on her face. He did this when she was upset. He couldn't understand upset yet, not really, but he could sense it in the way babies sense everything through vibration and warmth and the tension in the body that held him. He put his hand on her cheek and he looked at her with those enormous dark eyes. Yeah, she said, I know. She carried him out of the room and behind her, somewhere in the walls of this house in the corridors she couldn't see and the rooms she had never entered. Rex Malone was already making phone calls, already asking questions, already doing whatever it was that men like him did when a new variable entered their world and refused to behave like the variables that had come before. She didn't know what that looked like yet. She was going to find out. Carla didn't say a word when she moved them. She appeared at the door of the staff quarters 40 minutes after Rex walked out of the conference room with a key card in one hand and an expression that had been carefully drained of all opinion. She looked at Mia. She looked at Leo, who was sitting on the floor pulling the stuffing out of a small hole in his rabbit's ear. Then she looked at Mia again. East wing, she said. Third floor. Come with me. Mia picked up Leo and the duffel bag in one motion and followed her. She didn't ask questions. She understood instinctively that asking questions right now was the wrong move, that the grace she had been extended was thin and conditional and depended entirely on her not pushing against its edges. So she followed Carla down the corridor and up the stairs and through a door that Carla unlocked with a code she blocked with her body so Mia couldn't see it, and into a room that was larger than the entire apartment Mia had shared with Tommy for 2 years. She stood in the center of it and did not let herself react. Bathroom's through that door, Carla said. Closet. There's a second smaller room adjoining. That'll do for the child. She set the key card on the dresser. Meals will be left outside the door twice a day. You do not go to the main kitchen. You do not wander. You stay in this wing unless someone comes for you specifically. She paused. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You're telling me it's a nicer cage, Mia said. Carla looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted behind her eyes, something that wasn't quite sympathy but was adjacent to it. I'm telling you that you are currently the safest you have been in however long you've been running, she said. I suggest you treat it accordingly. She left. The door clicked shut with the soft, solid weight of a door with a good lock. Mia sat on the edge of the bed. Leo climbed into her lap immediately the way he always did when the energy around her changed. She put her chin on top of his head. She stared at the wall. She thought about what Rex had said. Not leaving. Already a security issue. He knew the Falcone name. She had seen it land on him, had seen the fraction of a second it took him to absorb it and decide what it meant. And she understood now with a cold clarity that had been building since she walked out of that conference room that she had not just stumbled into a safe house. She had stumbled into a war. She just didn't know yet which side of it she was standing on. Leo fell asleep in her lap an hour later, and Mia lay him down in the adjoining room and sat beside him in the dark and listened to him breathe and told herself she was going to get them out of this. She told herself that so many times it started to feel like a prayer again, worn smooth and wordless from repetition. Then she closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, she actually slept. She didn't hear the door open. She didn't hear the footsteps. She didn't know anyone had been in the room until she woke in the morning and found just outside the main door a tray with breakfast and a small paper bag. Inside the paper bag were 3 new board books, a pack of teething crackers, and a soft toy, a small yellow dog tag still on, clearly bought in the last several hours. She stood in the doorway holding the bag, and she did not know what to do with what she felt. She decided not to feel it. Feeling it was dangerous, she put the bag on the dresser and fed Leo his crackers and told herself it meant nothing. She told herself that for about 4 hours. Then Danny came to the door. He knocked twice hard, no nonsense, the knock of a man who wasn't used to waiting. Mia opened the door, and there he was, tall, shaved head, the scar running from his ear to his jaw, his eyes doing the same thing they'd done in the conference room, that flat measuring assessment that reminded her of a metal detector at an airport. Scanning for threat, scanning for weakness, cataloging both. Rex wants to talk, he said. Now, that's generally what wants to talk means. She picked Leo up. She didn't ask if she could bring him. She didn't ask for permission to bring him. She just held him against her hip and walked toward the door, and Danny stepped back. Not easily, not graciously, but he stepped back and she walked past him into the hallway. He led her to a room on the second floor she hadn't been to before. Not the conference room, something smaller, more private. Rex was at a desk, a phone face down beside him, papers arranged in a pattern that Mia suspected had meaning she couldn't decode. He was wearing a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked up when she came in, and his eyes went immediately to Leo, then back to her face. "Sit down," he said. She sat. Leo reached forward from her lap and grabbed at the edge of the desk. She pulled him back. He complained about this with a specific noise she privately called his injustice sound. Rex watched this. He said nothing about it. "Tommy Hayes," he said. "How long were you with him?" 2 years. "Was he working for Falcone the whole time?" "I didn't know he was working for Falcone at all until the last 4 months." She kept her voice even. She had told this story before to herself in the dark many times. It didn't hurt less, but it came out cleaner. "I knew he ran with people I didn't ask about. I thought I could keep those things separate. I know how that sounds." "It sounds like what it was," Rex said. Not unkindly, factually. "One night I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. About a shipment. About a man named Caruso who was going to have a problem if the shipment didn't arrive." She paused. "I didn't know who Caruso was. I looked him up. And then I understood what Tommy was." Rex was very still. "Did Tommy know you overheard?" "Not then. Later, I think later he suspected. Things changed after that." She shifted Leo to her other hip. "He started checking my phone, started telling me which of my friends I could see and which ones were a problem for him. Started saying things that weren't quite threats, but were close enough that I could feel the shape of them." "Did he hit you?" She looked at Rex. Direct question. Deserved a direct answer. "Once," she said. "And then I knew it would happen again, and I knew the next time would be worse. And I had Leo by then and—" She stopped. She looked down at Leo, who was now engaged in a serious effort to remove the button from her shirt. "And I left." Rex was quiet for a moment. "Then the conversation you overheard, about Caruso and the shipment, do you remember the details?" She had known this question was coming. Had been waiting for it from the moment she said Tommy's name out loud. Had been deciding all night what she was going to do when it arrived. "Yes," she said. "I need you to tell me." "I know." "Then tell me." She looked at him. "If I tell you that," she said carefully, "what does it make me to Tommy, to the Falcones?" She did not look away. "What does it make Leo?" Rex held her gaze. He did not answer quickly. She respected that. She had learned to distrust fast answers. "It makes you someone I owe a debt to," he said finally, "and I pay my debts." "That's not. It also makes you someone under my protection, which means Tommy Hayes cannot touch you, and neither can anyone who works for him or with him or answers to Falcone." He leaned forward slightly, just slightly, and his voice didn't change in volume, but it changed in weight. "That is not a small thing, Miss Turner. I want to make sure you understand that that is not a small thing." Mia understood. She was sitting in a room with a man whose protection was by most measures the closest thing to an unbreachable wall that existed in this city. She understood that, and she also understood that walls kept things out by keeping things in. She told him what she had heard. All of it. The shipment date, the location, Caruso's name, and what Tommy had said about him specifically, which was that Caruso was about to discover that loyalty to Falcone was non-negotiable, which she had understood at the time as a euphemism for something final. The second name that had come up, a name she had not recognized then, but that she repeated now exactly as she had heard it syllable by syllable because she had memorized it in the way you memorize things that frighten you. Rex's expression did not change, but his hand resting on the desk tightened just slightly, the knuckles shifting, and she filed that away. "Marco Reyes," he said. "Yes." "You're sure?" "I've been sure for 8 months." She met his eyes. "That name kept me awake more than Tommy did." Rex stood. He moved to the window. He stood with his back to her for a long moment, and Mia watched the line of his shoulders and understood that something she'd said had just rearranged the architecture of something he'd already believed. She didn't know what. She only knew that the room felt different, now heavier, the way a room feels after someone says out loud the thing everyone has been thinking but not saying. Rex. Danny's voice came through the door, sharp and immediate. One knock. Not now. Rex. Harder this time. The door opened anyway, and Danny was in the doorway, and his face had changed entirely from the measuring blankness of 20 minutes ago. What was on his face now was something Mia had seen before on other men in other contexts. Urgency held under tight control. We have a problem. Rex turned from the window. Tommy Hayes is at the front gate. The silence that followed lasted less than 3 seconds. It felt longer than that. It felt like it had an entire history compressed inside it all. The running, all the planning, all the careful, invisible months compressed into 3 seconds of silence in a room that suddenly felt very small. Mia stood. She was on her feet before she had decided to stand. Leo pulled up against her chest, her hand at the back of his head. He doesn't know she's here, Danny said quickly. He asked for Rex, said it's about the Caruso deal, said Falcone sent him personally. A pause that carried its own weight. Either it's a coincidence, it's not a coincidence, Rex said, or someone told him. No one told him. Rex's voice was absolutely flat, controlled in the way that things are controlled right before they stop being controlled. He looked at Mia. How good is he at reading a space? Reading when something's off. He's very good, she said. Her voice was steady. She did not know how her voice was steady. He's smart. He notices things. Then he can't come inside. Rex looked at Danny. Take 2 men to the gate. Tell him Rex will be in touch. Tell him the timing doesn't work today. Do not let him pass the gate. Do not let him see the property. Do not. He's already at the gate, Rex, not outside it. Security let him through the first checkpoint before I got the message. Mia heard the sound of her own heartbeat. How far is the first checkpoint from the main house, she said. 200 yards, Danny said. 200 yards. She looked at Leo. Leo looked at her. He touched her cheek with one hand the way he did. He had no idea. He had absolutely no idea. East wing out, Rex said. He was looking at Mia. You go back to the east wing, you go now. You do not open that door for any reason at all, until I personally come and knock. 3 times, then 2. You understand 3, then 2. What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to Tommy Hayes. Rex, about 3 knocks, then 2. He held her gaze for exactly 1 more second, and there was something in that second, something she couldn't name yet, something that wasn't strategy or calculation, but something rawer than that, something almost personal, and then it was gone, locked back behind the wall. Go! She went. Danny was beside her in the hallway, moving her fast, not touching her, but creating a pressure at her back like a current. She moved through the corridor and up the stairs and into the east wing and heard the door engage behind her. And then she was in the room and Leo was on her hip, and she was standing in the center of a space that felt suddenly far less safe than it had 5 minutes ago. She went to the adjoining room and sat on the floor beside Leo's small sleep space, and she put Leo down and held both his hands in hers, and she breathed. She thought about Tommy, about the way he walked into a room, about the specific thing he did with his eyes, when he was looking for something that slow, systematic sweep, methodical patient that she had thought once was attentiveness and had later understood was something else entirely. He would walk up to that house. He would look at it, and if there was anything out of place, anything at all, any vibration in the atmosphere, any shift in the energy of the men around Rex, he would feel it. Because Tommy Hayes had not survived the Falcones by missing things. She heard nothing for 20 minutes. Then 40. Leo fell asleep. Mia did not. Then she heard footsteps in the corridor. Steady, unhurried. She was on her feet before the first knock came. 3. Pause. 2. She opened the door. Rex stood in the hallway. His shirt was still rolled to the elbows. His face was composed. Behind him, just at the edge of the corridor, Danny stood with his arms crossed, watching something she couldn't see. He's gone, Rex said. The breath she let out had been living in her lungs for almost an hour. What did he say? What he said he came to say, about Caruso, about the deal. Rex was watching her face carefully, and then he left. Did he? She stopped. She tried again. Did he say anything about me? Rex looked at her for a moment that lasted slightly too long. Not a hesitation, An evaluation. The kind of silence someone uses when they are deciding how much of the truth to give. He asked Carla how many staff were currently live-in, he said. She felt the cold move through her like water. What did Carla say? Carla said 3, which is the truth if you don't count a 15-month-old child and his mother. Something very small moved at the corner of his mouth. It was not quite a smile, but it was the closest thing to one she had seen on his face. Carla is very precise about what she counts. Mia put her hand against the door frame. Her legs had gone soft at the knees. She pressed against the wood and breathed. He'll come back, she said. I know. He won't believe it forever. He'll keep pulling the thread until... I know. He said it the same way both times, not dismissively, with the weight of a man who had already calculated what she was telling him and factored it into something larger. That's why you're not leaving. You said that before. I'm saying it again. He looked at her directly, and this time the wall was still there, but it was thinner, and behind it she could see something that was not performance and not strategy, something that had surprised even him. Because right now the safest place for you and that child is inside this house, and I need you to stop treating that fact like a threat and start treating it like what it is. She looked at him. What is it? He held her gaze. A chance, he said. Then he turned and walked back down the corridor, and Danny fell in behind him, and Mia stood in the doorway and watched them go and pressed her hand against the wood and let herself, for the first time in 8 months, believe in the possibility of something that wasn't fear. From the other room, Leo made a small sound in his sleep, a soft, contented sound, the sound of a child who felt safe. She went and sat beside him in the dark. She listened to him breathe. She thought about Tommy's face, about the way he asked questions that seemed like small talk, about the fact that he had been in this building today, 200 yards from where she sat, and she thought about what Rex had said that name, Marco Reyes, the tightening of his hand on the desk, the half-second of something moving behind his eyes. She understood now that what she had carried out of Tommy's apartment 8 months ago, the words she had overheard and memorized because they frightened her, was not just information. It was a key. She didn't know yet what door it opened. She didn't know if opening that door would save them or destroy everything. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Tommy Hayes had not come to this house to talk about the Caruso deal. He had come to find her, and he was going to come back. Tommy Hayes came back on a Thursday. Mia knew it before Danny told her. She felt it the way she always felt Tommy, not in any single thing that she could point to, but in the accumulation of small signals, the way the house tightened, the way the men outside her door stopped their low conversation and went quiet, the way even the ordinary sounds of the estate seemed to hold their breath. She had been here 3 weeks now, long enough to know the rhythms of this place the way she had once known the rhythms of every place she'd lived, learned them fast, learned them out of necessity, because knowing the rhythms meant knowing when something was off. Something was off. She had Leo on the floor between her knees, working on a shape sorter that Carla had left outside the door 2 days ago, with no note and no explanation, which seemed to be Carla's preferred mode of communication regarding anything she didn't want to officially acknowledge. Leo had the yellow circle and was attempting to put it through the red square slot with the absolute conviction of a child who had not yet learned that the universe had rules. When Danny knocked, she already had Leo in her arms. He's at the gate, Danny said when she opened the door. He didn't bother with preamble. He had stopped doing that somewhere in the second week. Rex says stay put, same as last time. Same as last time didn't work, Mia said. Danny looked at her. Meaning last time he left and came back 4 days later, and this time it'll be 3 days. And the time after that it'll be 2. He's testing the pattern, Danny. He's measuring the resistance. She shifted Leo to her other hip. Tommy doesn't quit. He never quits. He just changes his approach until he finds the one that works. Danny's jaw moved slightly. She had learned that this was his tell, the almost imperceptible shift in his jaw, when she said something he didn't want to agree with, but couldn't argue against. He had more tells than he thought he did. Rex had almost none. I'll tell Rex, he said. Tell him I need to talk to him before he goes down. Mia, before he goes down, Danny. He held her gaze for 2 seconds. Then he turned and walked away, and she stood in the doorway with Leo and waited. Rex appeared 90 seconds later. He moved fast when he moved. There was no wasted motion in him, no deliberate performance of urgency, just efficiency, the way a well-made machine moves. He came down the corridor and stopped in front of her, and she could tell from the set of his shoulders that he was already in the part of his mind that dealt with Tommy already 3 moves ahead. "He's going to ask about staffing again," she said, "or something adjacent, something that sounds casual. He does that, ask the question that sounds small, so the answer seems cheap. But he's not looking for the cheap answer. He's building a picture. I know how Tommy Hayes operates. Then you know he won't stop until the picture is complete." She looked at him directly. "Let me talk to him." The change in Rex's face was immediate and absolute. "No. Listen, that is not happening. Rex." She kept her voice level. She had thought about this all night, had rehearsed it, had anticipated every version of his refusal. "He's going to find me eventually. That's not pessimism, that's just math. He is methodical and he is patient and he has resources I can't see. And when he finds me, the element of surprise is gone and he comes in on his terms, not yours." She let that land for a second. "But if I'm the one who makes contact controlled on my terms, with you knowing every word before I say it, then he's reacting instead of acting. He's off balance. You can see what he does when he's off balance." Rex stared at her. She could not read his expression. She had gotten better at reading him over 3 weeks, but there were still registers she couldn't access, still parts of his face that belonged to a language she hadn't learned yet. "He'll know something's wrong the moment he hears your voice," Rex said. "He'll know something's wrong eventually, regardless. I'm not trying to convince him everything's fine." She pressed forward. "I'm trying to buy you time. A week, maybe 2. Enough time for whatever you're doing with the information I gave you about Reyes to actually do something." Rex was quiet for a long moment. She could hear the clock in the corridor. She could hear Leo breathing against her shoulder. "You know what he'll do if he finds out you helped me," Rex said. Not a question, a test. He was seeing if she had thought it all the way through. "Yes," she said, "and you're still standing here asking me this." "Yes." Something shifted in his face, not softness, not exactly. Something more like the thing that happens to hard ground after a long rain. Still solid, but changed underneath. "You don't make contact," he said. "You don't talk to him. What I will do is have you on the line during my conversation with him. Silent, listening only. And after you tell me everything you noticed, every inflection, every word choice, everything that was different from last time." He held up one hand before she could respond. "That is the only version of this that happens. Do you understand me?" She understood. It was less than she'd asked for and more than she'd expected. "Yes. And Mia." He said her first name so rarely that when he used it, the sound of it changed the quality of the air between them. She noticed every time. She was trying very hard not to notice every time. If at any point during that conversation he says something that tells me he knows you're here, anything, one word, one question, you take Leo and then you do not leave that room for any reason. Not for me, not for Danny, not for anyone who doesn't give you the code. Are we clear? 3 then 2, she said. 3 then 2. He turned and she followed him, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she was moving toward the thing she'd been running from rather than away from it, and the terror and the relief of that were so tangled together she couldn't find the seam between them. Danny handed her a phone in the corridor outside the second-floor room, a small device screen dark with a single earpiece. "You hear everything," he said quietly. "You say nothing. Your end is muted. If something happens, if Rex signals, he'll say the word Thursday, means where you get to the room you move. No questions, no hesitation." "Thursday," she repeated. "Move." She took the earpiece. She put it in. She sat in the chair Danny pointed her to, and she held Leo in her lap and she listened. She heard Rex's voice first calm, even with that particular quality she had come to recognize as his public register, the one that was friendly on the surface and absolutely impenetrable underneath. "Tommy, come in." Then Tommy. She had not heard his voice in 8 months. She thought she had been prepared for it. She had not been prepared for it. It hit her somewhere behind the sternum with a physical force, something the body remembered even when the mind had been carefully rehearsing neutrality. His voice was exactly the same, warm, easy, the kind of voice you would trust immediately if you didn't know what it was attached to. Rex, appreciate you making time. I know it was short notice. No trouble. What can I do for you? Falcone's got questions about the distribution route, specifically the third checkpoint. He thinks there's been some slippage, wants to know if your people have seen anything inconsistent. Smooth, she thought. Completely smooth. If she hadn't known Tommy, if she hadn't had 8 months of listening to him and cataloging the distance between what his mouth said and what his eyes meant, she would have believed it entirely. It sounded like exactly what it claimed to be. But Tommy didn't do small errands. Tommy Hayes did not personally carry distribution questions from Falcone to Rex Malone. That was 3 levels below him. He sent someone for that. He always sent someone for that. She almost said it out loud before she remembered the muted line. She sat forward. Leo, sensing the change in her body, looked up at her face. She heard Rex and Tommy talk for another 4 minutes about logistics that sounded real enough to be borrowed from an actual conversation, but had the slight generic quality of a frame built to hold a different painting. And then there it was. She almost missed it because it arrived so casually. Funny thing, Tommy said. I ran into a guy the other day who said he thought he saw a woman he recognized leaving this area. Said she had a kid with her. Little one. A pause. Perfectly weighted. I told him he was probably wrong. People see what they expect to see, right? Silence on Rex's end. Exactly the right length of silence. Not too fast, not slow enough to signal calculation. Sounds about right, Rex said. Yeah, Tommy laughed. Easy, light. He described her, though. Dark hair, maybe 5'4", 5'5". Young. I thought to myself, that's half the women in this city. Another pause. Your staff turnover much. Carla manages staff, you'd have to ask her. Maybe I will. Not a threat. Conversational. She around, she's not in today. Shame. The conversation ended 2 minutes later. Pleasantries, handshake sounds, the particular rhythm of 2 men who understood each other and were both pretending they didn't. Mia pulled the earpiece out. Her hand was steady. She was proud of that. Her hand was steady. Leo put his palm against her face. Danny came through the door first, then Rex 30 seconds behind him. Rex looked at her immediately. He knows, she said. He suspects, Rex said. In Tommy's world, those are the same thing. She stood. Leo wrapped his legs around her waist. The man who saw me, that's not a real person. That's a test. He wanted to see your face when he said it. Dark hair, 5'4". That's me. He described me. Her voice was still level. She was holding it level with both hands. He's been asking around outside the gate. Someone in the neighborhood saw me coming in. Rex and Danny exchanged a look that she had learned to read in shorthand. It was the look that meant they were communicating something she wasn't supposed to see, but that she saw anyway. What? She said. Rex looked at her. Carla went to the pharmacy this morning. She took the north exit. She was seen. The air went out of the room. With Leo, Mia's voice came out differently than she intended. No. Rex shook his head immediately. Alone, but Tommy has someone watching the exits. He knows people live here who don't leave through the front gate. He said it plainly the way he said everything, not softening it, not amplifying it, just giving it to her at full weight. He's closing the circle. She thought about Carla in the hallway that first morning, looking at Leo's outstretched hand, about the bag of board books and teething crackers left without explanation, about the shape sorter with no note, about a woman who had made a decision to count carefully and had been doing it ever since quietly without being asked. Is Carla safe? Mia said. Rex looked at her, and for a fraction of a second she saw something move across his face that was not strategic calculation. She's fine, he said. She's back in the house. Tommy will connect her to me. Tommy will try. Rex, I said she's fine, Mia. He said it with a firmness that was not quite a wall but was close to one. Like he was saying, I will handle this, and I need you to let me handle this, and the reason I need that is not about control, but about the fact that there is only so much I can move at one time, and you pushing on this will make it harder. She understood that. She heard all of it underneath the 3 words. She let it go. Danny said, we should move up the timetable. On Reyes. On everything. The name hit the room differently now than it had in the study 3 weeks ago. Mia had been turning it over every day since then. That name, Marco Reyes, and the way Rex's hand had tightened on the desk when she said it. She had not asked. She had been waiting consciously for the moment when asking would be the right move and not a wrong one. She thought this might be the moment. "Who is Marco Reyes to you?" she said. The silence that followed was 4 seconds long. That was longer than Rex's silences usually ran. Danny looked at the wall. "He ran with us," Rex said finally. 3 years ago, he was one of mine." She kept her face still. "Was. He went to Falcone 18 months ago, took information with him." A pause. "Took something that wasn't information too." His jaw moved barely. "What you heard Tommy say about Caruso, about the loyalty being non-negotiable, that order came from Reyes, not from Falcone. Falcone is the money and the name. Reyes is the one who moves the pieces." She absorbed that. She rearranged the architecture of everything she thought she had understood. "Then the shipment I heard about," she said slowly, "that's not a Falcone operation. Not primarily. It's Reyes, running through Falcone's network." "Yes. And whatever you've been building, whatever you've been doing with what I told you, it's aimed at Reyes." Rex looked at her directly. "It has always been aimed at Reyes. What you gave me was a date and a location and a name that confirmed what I have been trying to confirm for 7 months." Something moved in his eyes that she now had a name for. Not rage, not grief, but the specific blend of both that belongs to betrayal, the kind that gets personal. "You gave me the piece I was missing." She felt the weight of that, the actual physical weight of it settling across her shoulders. "So everything that's happening," she said, "Tommy looking for me, him being sent here, all of it." "Reyes knows I'm close," Rex said. "He doesn't know how close or where the leak is. He's probing. Tommy is his probe. And She stopped. She looked at Leo, back at Rex. "I'm the leak." "You're the reason I know what I know," Rex said. "That's different." "Tommy won't see it as different." "No," Rex said. "He won't." The honesty of it hit her differently than cruelty would have. Cruelty she knew how to handle. She had built up defenses against cruelty over 2 years that she could access quickly, automatically. Honesty like this, plain and unsparing, and given to her as if she were someone who deserved to know the truth she had fewer defenses for. It went in differently. "Okay," she said. Rex looked at her. "Okay. Tell me what I need to do." He studied her for a long moment, and she saw it again, the thing she had first seen in the conference room, when Leo grabbed his thumb, that brief, unguarded something that lived underneath all the walls and the weight and the cold reputation. It moved across his face now with more room to breathe, more visible, because they were alone, except for Danny, and Danny had the tact suddenly to find something very interesting to look at near the door. "Right now," Rex said, "you don't do anything. You stay in this wing. You keep Leo close. You trust me." She held his gaze. "That's a big ask." "I know it is." He said it without deflection, without the usual armor. "I know what I'm asking. I know what it costs someone in your position to trust someone in mine." He did not look away. "I'm asking anyway." She thought about 8 months, about the duffel bag and the library computer and the bus station where Donna held Leo in the dark, about the lock on the first door and how much that lock had meant, about a paper bag with board books and teething crackers left without a note, about a yellow dog with the tag still on. 3 knocks, she said. Then 2. Rex nodded once. 3, he said. Then in 2. He left. Danny left. The door engaged behind them. Mia sat back down on the floor and put Leo in her lap, and he immediately went back to the shape sorter, yellow circle, red square slot, same absolute conviction as before. She watched him work. She put her chin on top of his head. She was not naive. She had never been naive, not really. Not even in the years before Tommy, when she had been young enough to be forgiven for it. She understood exactly what she was in the middle of. She understood that Rex Malone was a man who had built an empire on things she would not look at directly, that the protection he was offering came wrapped in violence she had not witnessed, but did not doubt that the walls of this house were kept standing by decisions she would not have been able to make herself. She understood all of that. She held it alongside the other things she understood. The board books, the shape sorter, the 3 knocks and then 2. She had spent 8 months running from something. She was beginning very carefully to understand the difference between running from and running toward. Leo got the yellow circle into the yellow circle slot. He looked up at her with the expression of a child who has just rearranged the universe. "Yeah," she said softly. "Good job, Bug." He laughed. The sound of it moved through the room like it owned the place, clean and unafraid, the laugh of a child who did not yet know enough to be afraid. Mia closed her eyes for a second and let the sound of it fill her up. Outside, somewhere in the house, she heard voices shifting. Movement. The particular change in energy that meant something was being set in motion. She opened her eyes. Tommy Hayes was closing the circle, and Rex Malone was about to show him what happened to people who got too close. The call came at 2 a.m. Mia heard it through the wall, not the words, just the tone. Rex's voice at that hour had a different quality than it did during the day. Flatter, more compressed. The voice of a man who slept lightly and woke fully and did not waste time climbing back to consciousness when something required him. She had learned the sound of it over 4 weeks the way you learn the sound of weather. Not because you chose to, but because it mattered. She lay still in the dark and listened to Leo breathing in the next room and stared at the ceiling and knew with the particular certainty of someone who had spent too long living on the edge of other people's decisions that something had shifted. She was right. Danny was at her door at 2:45. He didn't knock loudly. He didn't need to. She was already awake and her hand was already on the door handle. "We need you," he said. She looked at him. In 4 weeks, Danny had gone from the man she was most afraid of in this house to something she couldn't quite categorize. Not friend, not ally exactly. Something more functional than either a man who had decided she was not a threat and had subsequently been to reorganize his behavior around that conclusion with the same efficiency he applied to everything. He didn't soften, he didn't warm, but he stopped looking at her like she was a problem that hadn't been solved yet. "Leo," she said, "Carla's coming to sit with him. 2 minutes. "What happened?" "Rex will tell you." "Danny." He looked at her. In the low light of the corridor, his scar caught the shadow and made his face harder than it already was. "Reyes made a move," he said. "That's all I know right now. That's all anyone knows right now. Come when Carla gets here." Carla appeared exactly 2 minutes later, in a robe, her silver hair, loose the first time Mia had ever seen it down. She looked at Mia without ceremony and said, "Go, he's fine. I'll be right here." Mia went. Rex was in the room he used as an office when he wasn't using the conference room, the one where she had told him about Tommy and Caruso and the name that had tightened his hand on the desk. There were 3 other men in the room she had seen before, but whose names she only knew partially. She thought of them as the architecture of Rex's world, load-bearing, mostly invisible unless something threatened to collapse. Rex looked up when she came in. "Sit down," he said, then to the other men. "Give us a minute." They filed out. Danny stayed at the door inside but angled away, which was his version of privacy. Rex pushed a photograph across the desk toward her. She looked at it. It was grainy, shot at distance, the kind of image that came from a camera that was never meant to be seen. 2 men talking outside what looked like a service entrance. One of them she didn't recognize. The other she did. Tommy. "This was taken 6 hours ago," Rex said, "at the east loading entrance of a building we use for staging. A building that is not on any document with my name attached to it. A building that exactly 4 people outside this house know exists." He let that settle. Tommy Hayes was there. She looked at the photograph. She looked at the man beside Tommy, heavyset, older, a particular stillness in his posture that she had seen once before in a man who worked very hard to never be memorable. "Who's the other one?" she said. Rex was quiet for precisely the kind of beat that meant the answer was important. "His name is Garrett. He has worked for me for 9 years. She looked up from the photograph. "He called in sick 2 days ago," Rex said. "Said it was his back. He's had back trouble before. I didn't think about it." Something moved in his jaw, the same movement she had seen in Danny when he was processing something he didn't want to accept. "I should have thought about it." "Garrett is Reyes's inside man," she said. "Was." She absorbed the past tense. She did not ask what it meant. She understood what it meant. She understood that there were parts of this world that operated by rules. She had made a deliberate decision not to examine directly. Not because she was naive, but because examining them would require her to make a judgment she wasn't positioned to make from where she stood. She was a woman with a 15-month-old child in a house that was the only thing between her and Tommy Hayes. Her moral geography was complicated, and she knew it. Tommy knows about the staging location, she said, which means Reyes knows, which means the timeline I had for moving against Reyes just collapsed. Rex pulled the photograph back. He looked at it once more, then turned it face down. I had 3 weeks. Now I have days, maybe less. What do you need from me? He looked at her. The conversation you overheard. Tommy and the other man. You said a date the 14th. And a location you said he said the warehouse near the rail yard on Comstock. Yes. Is there anything else you heard that night that you didn't tell me? Anything you dismissed as small or unimportant, she thought. She had gone over that night so many times in her memory that the grooves of it were worn deep, and she had given him everything, or she thought she had. She pressed back into it, now the way you press on a bruise to find exactly where it lives. He mentioned a name, she said slowly. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it was connected. A woman's name. He said it once and then they moved on. She paused. Elena. Rex's entire body changed. It was subtle, nothing theatrical, no visible flinch, nothing a stranger would have caught. But she was not a stranger to him anymore, and she caught it the way the stillness shifted quality, the way something moved through him and got locked down so fast it was almost like it hadn't happened. Almost. Say that again, he said. Aye, Elena. She watched his face. Do you know that name? He did not answer right away. He stood up. He walked the length of the room and stood with his back to her for a moment, and she let him have it that moment because she understood that the name had just done something to him that had nothing to do with strategy and everything to do with the part of him that lived under all of it. Rex, her voice was quiet but direct. If that name matters, I need to know why. Not because I'm asking for information I'm not entitled to. Because if it changes anything about what Tommy's actually doing here, if it changes what he wants, then it changes everything I know about how to predict him. Rex turned around. His face was composed. It was the most composed she had ever seen it, which meant whatever was behind it was the most complicated thing she had encountered in him yet. Elena Reyes, he said, Marco's sister. She waited. She came to me 14 months ago, said she wanted out, said she had information about Marco that she was willing to give me in exchange for help getting her and her daughter out of the city. He paused. I helped her. Where is she now? Safe house, outside the city, a location that, he stopped, his jaw moved, a location that Garrett knew. The silence that followed had weight, real physical weight. Mia felt it press against her chest. He's not just probing, she said. Tommy coming here, the staging location Garrett, it's not about me at all, is it? She said it and heard the truth of it as she said it the way some true truths arrive already fully formed, just waiting for a mouth to give them sound. Finding me is secondary. Finding Elena is the whole thing. If Reyes gets Elena back, Rex said, he gets back everything she told me, and he gets to decide what to do about it. And if he can't get her back, he'll make an example of whoever helped her. Rex looked at her directly. That's me and everyone connected to me. The room was very quiet. Danny, Rex said without raising his voice. Danny turned from the door. Already on it, he said. He had heard. Of course he had heard. I've got 2 men moving toward Elena's location now, and I've got someone trying to get eyes on Tommy's current position. How long to move Elena to the secondary location? 4 hours if she cooperates, 6 if she doesn't. She'll cooperate, Rex said. Tell her I said Marco knows where she is. She'll cooperate. Danny left. The room felt larger without him, or maybe smaller. Mia couldn't decide. She looked at Rex. This is bigger than what I walked into, she said. Yes. You knew it was going to escalate. I knew it could. He sat back down. He looked tired for the first time since she had met him, not physically or not only physically. Tired in the way that people get tired when they have been carrying something for a long time and can feel the distance still remaining. I didn't know it would go this fast. Garrett was supposed to. I should have seen that. You can't see everything. He looked at her. It was a look she didn't fully understand as something in it that was almost surprised, as if the statement had arrived from an unexpected direction. I run this operation, he said. Seeing everything is the job. Nobody sees everything. She said it plainly without gentleness and without harshness. If you did, you wouldn't need me to tell you about a conversation I overheard 8 months ago. You'd have already known. She held his gaze. You're good at this. That doesn't mean you're infinite. He was quiet for a moment. Then something happened in his face that she had been catching glimpses of for 4 weeks, small pieces, corners, and edges, never the full thing. It happened now, fully, briefly, unguarded. He looked at her the way people look at someone who has said the thing they didn't know they needed to hear, with the specific expression of a man who has been in the habit of carrying things alone and has just without deciding to set one of them down. Your son, he said. How is he? The shift was so sudden she blinked. He's fine, he's good. She paused. He's been asking for you. Rex's expression changed again. She hadn't meant to say it. She hadn't planned to say it. It was simply true, and in the unguarded atmosphere of 2:45 in the morning, after a phone call that had just collapsed a 3-week timeline, the truth had come out without asking permission. Leo had been saying it for a week. A specific sound, not the DA he said to mailboxes and ceiling fans, but something more directed, accompanied by pointing at the door at the corridor in the direction of the rest of the house. She had told herself it was coincidence. She had told herself a 15-month-old didn't have sufficient object permanence for this kind of directed longing. She had told herself this right up until the third morning in a row, when Leo had crawled to the door of the suite, pulled himself up against it, and knocked on it twice with his small flat palm. 3 times then, too, she had thought, and then had to look at the ceiling to get her face under control. Rex was looking at her with an expression she would have called vulnerable on anyone else. On him, it just looked like honesty stripped of its armor. He's a good kid, Rex said. He is, she said. He's the best thing I've ever done. You're doing it right. He said it simply, not as a compliment, not as reassurance, as an observation. The way you are with him, the way he is, you're doing it right. She didn't say anything. She held the words and felt their weight and didn't try to deflect them or diminish them, because she had spent enough time with people who didn't mean the things they said, and she knew in the way you know things you can't prove but don't need to, that he meant this exactly. Rex, Danny's voice through the door, urgent in the way that Danny's voice only got when the situation had no room left for anything but urgency. We have a problem. Rex was on his feet before the sentence finished. What? Danny came in. His face was the face she had seen only once before in the corridor the first time Tommy came to the gate. Urgency held under control. Control beginning to strain. Tommy's not at the location we had for him, he said. We lost visual 20 minutes ago. We just picked him up again. He paused 1 second. He's 3 blocks from here. The room went to a different temperature entirely. Moving or stationary, Rex said. Moving toward us, on foot. Danny looked at Mia for exactly 1 second, then back at Rex. He's not alone. How many? At least 4, maybe 6. They split up 2 blocks back. We think they're coming from 2 directions. Rex was already moving. He came around the desk, and he was in motion with that particular efficiency that she had come to recognize as his version of running, not fast for show, fast because every second was a resource and wasting it was a choice he wouldn't make. He stopped at the door and turned. Mia, East Wing, now. Leo's there with Carla. Then you go to Leo and you lock the door and you do not open it. For anyone. His eyes were on her face and the wall was fully down now, not because of the danger, but despite it, as if the danger had burned away whatever remaining performance there was and left only the actual man underneath. I need to know you're there. I need to know you and Leo are in that room. If I'm thinking about where you are, I'm not thinking about what I need to think about. Do you understand? She understood. She understood all of it. The tactical logic and the other thing underneath the tactical logic, the thing that was not tactical at all, the thing that had been growing in this house over 4 weeks, the way things grow when they have good conditions and enough time and nobody has thought to stop them. I understand, she said. He looked at her for 1 more second. 1 second of the actual man, no wall, no reputation, no cold empire built on fear and power. Just a man looking at a woman in a room at 2:45 in the morning with 6 dangerous people 3 blocks away, and something between them that neither had named yet and both could feel. Then he turned and he was gone, and Danny was gone, and the corridor was full of movement and sound, the house activating the way she had always known it could, had always felt the potential of in the quality of stillness and that preceded it. She ran back through the corridor and up the stairs and into the east wing, and she hit the door of the suite, and Carla opened it before she could knock, and Leo was awake in Carla's arms, bright-eyed, looking at Mia with the focused attention of a child who has sensed something important. "I heard," Carla said. She handed Leo over. "Get in the far room, away from the exterior wall." "Carla, I'm staying." Her voice was absolute, no argument available. "I have been in this house for 19 years, and I have been through worse than Tommy Hayes. Get in the room, bitte." Mia looked at her, at this woman who had counted carefully and covered for her and left books and crackers outside a door without ever asking for a thank you. She wanted to say something. She couldn't find the right words, and there wasn't time. "Thank you," she said. Just that. Carla's expression shifted by almost nothing, but the almost nothing was everything. "Go," she said. Mia went into the inner room and pressed her back against the wall and held Leo against her chest and listened. Leo put his hands on either side of her face. He looked at her. "Da," he said, but not to the room this time, not to the ceiling. He was looking at her face when he said it, and she understood with the specific anguish of a mother who loves her child more than her own continuity that he was asking for Rex. "I know, Bug," she whispered. "I know." She heard nothing for 12 minutes. 12 minutes that were longer than the 8 months before them. Leo stayed awake quiet against her, as if he understood that this was a time for quiet. As if some ancient instinct in him, the one that was older than language, recognized what the silence around them meant. Then she heard it. Downstairs. Not close, not in this wing, but audible, a sound that was not quite a crash, and not quite a shout, but was in the same family as both. Then voices, low, intense, overlapping. Then nothing. The nothing lasted 4 minutes. Then footsteps in the corridor. Steady, unhurried. She counted. 3 knocks. Pause. 2. She opened the door. Rex was standing in the hallway. He had a cut along his left jaw that was bleeding in a thin, steady line down to his collar, and his shirt was torn at the shoulder, and he was carrying his left arm slightly differently than usual. And his face was the face of a man who had done what needed to be done and was now on the other side of it, in the particular aftermath that follows violent resolution when the body is still running hot and the mind is already 2 steps ahead into what comes next. He looked at her. He looked at Leo. His entire body changed on a frequency she felt rather than saw. Leo reached out both arms. Rex crossed the space between them, and he took Leo from her arms, and he held him against his chest, and Leo grabbed the front of his shirt with both fists the same way he had in the conference room 4 weeks ago, and Rex put one large hand on the back of his head, and he closed his eyes for 1 second. Just 1 second. Mia stood into the doorway and watched that 1 second and did not look away from it and did not try to name it and did not try to manage what it did to her chest. "Tommy," she said. Rex opened his eyes. He looked at her over the top of Leo's head. "Gone," he said. "Gone how?" "Gone running. We got 2 of his people." He saw how it was going and he cut. Rex's jaw tightened, which means he goes back to Reyes, which means Reyes knows it didn't work, which means it escalates, she said. "Yes." She nodded once. She had known. She had known since the first day that this was not a story with an easy ending. Easy endings did not belong to people in her circumstances. She had stopped expecting them somewhere around month 3 of running, when the novelty of the fear had worn off, and what was left underneath was just the long, hard work of staying alive. But she was still here. Leo was still here. Rex was standing in front of her, holding her son with a cut on his jaw and a torn shirt and his eyes on her face. She reached out and pressed 2 fingers gently against the cut on his jaw. Not a gesture she had planned. Not something she would have done yesterday or the day before or the day before that. It arrived from somewhere that had been building for 4 weeks without her consent, and when it arrived, it felt less like a choice and more like gravity. Rex went very still. Leo looked at her hand on Rex's face, and then looked at Rex, and then looked at Mia, and made a sound that in a movie would have been played for comedy, but here in this corridor at 3 in the morning, landed like the realest thing she had ever heard. Yeah, she said softly. She dropped her hand. You need Carla to look at that. It's fine, Rex said. Rex. It's fine, Mia. She looked at him. He looked at her. Between them, Leo made a small content sound and settled more deeply into Rex's arms. Somewhere in the city, Tommy Hayes was running. Somewhere outside the city, Elena Reyes was being moved. Somewhere in the machinery of this war, Marco Reyes was learning that his plan had failed and recalculating the way dangerous men recalculate, not with panic, but with patience and with the specific cold resolve of someone who has always believed that persistence is its own kind of violence. All of that was true. All of that was coming. But right now, in this corridor, the cut on Rex Malone's jaw was bleeding, and her son was in his arms, and the door behind her was locked from the inside, and Mia Turner, who had spent 8 months running toward nothing in particular, stood still for the first time and felt the ground solid under her feet. The next 72 hours moved the way time moves in a crisis, too fast and too slow simultaneously, each hour both endless and gone before she had finished living it. Rex did not sleep. She knew this not because she watched him, but because the house told her. The house had become a language she could read now, its sounds and silences, a text she had been studying without meaning to. She heard his voice at odd hours through walls low and continuous, the specific cadence of a man making decisions out loud to men who needed to hear them. She heard Danny's boots in the corridor at 4 a.m., then again at 6. She heard the front gate open and close more times in 3 days than it usually did in a week. She stayed in the East Wing. She did not have to be told. She understood the geometry of the situation, that her visibility was a liability, that Tommy had seen enough of the estate to be able to map it roughly, that moving through the house meant creating a trail that could be read from the outside. So she stayed. She read Leo his board books 4 times each until she had them memorized, until she was reciting them from memory, while Leo turned the pages at his own pace, which was the pace of a child who believed every page deserved full consideration. She moved through the suite and the small adjoining room and the bathroom and back again, and she pressed her hand against the lock every time she passed the door, and she breathed. On the second morning, Carla brought breakfast herself instead of leaving it outside. She came in and set the tray on the table and looked at Leo, who was standing at the small coffee table, walking himself around its perimeter with the careful, determined concentration of a child on the verge of something. He's close, Carla said. I know. Mia watched him. He's been doing that for 2 days. Takes about 4 steps and then sits down. He'll do it when he's ready. Carla poured coffee without being asked. She pushed the cup toward Mia. They're close too, she said. Rex and Danny. On Reyes. Whatever they've been building, it's nearly there. Mia wrapped both hands around the cup. How do you know? Because Rex ate breakfast this morning. Carla said it simply. He doesn't eat when something is still unsolved. When he eats, the shape of the problem has changed. Mia looked at her. 19 years is a long time to know someone. It is. Something moved across Carla's face, not sentiment exactly, but the kind of thing that lives underneath sentiment, the bedrock of it. He was 26 when I started here. He was already hard then, but hard the way green wood is hard still, something live underneath. She paused. I haven't seen the underneath in a long time. Mia didn't say anything. I'm saying this once and I'm not going to repeat it, Carla said, because it is not my place to say it at all, and you are going to listen, and then we are both going to pretend I didn't. She picked up the empty tray. Whatever you are doing to that man, whatever it is that you and that baby are doing to him, don't stop. She left before Mia could respond. The door clicked shut with its usual solid finality. Mia sat with the coffee and the silence and Leo circling the coffee table, and she pressed her lips together, and she did not cry, but it was a closer thing than she would have admitted to anyone. Rex came to the suite that evening. He knocked 3, then 2, and she opened the door, and he was standing in the corridor without Danny, for the first time she could recall, and he looked different than he had 2 days ago. The cut on his jaw had closed a thin, dark line, now almost a scar, already the body moving fast to repair itself the way bodies do when they are used to damage. He looked like a man on the near side of something enormous, like a man who could see the end of it. Can I come in? He asked. It was the first time he had asked. He had always simply told her, sit down, go to the East Wing, 3 then 2. The asking arrived differently. She stepped back and let him in. Leo was on the floor with the yellow dog. He looked up when Rex came in, and his whole body changed the way it always did, the particular brightening, the reaching upward of both arms, the sound he made that was not quite a word, but was absolutely a greeting. Rex crossed the room and picked him up without hesitation. He did it the way he had done it since the conference room, with the ease of someone for whom holding a child was not awkward, had never been awkward, which told her something she had been filing away without commenting on. "Sit down," she said, and then almost laughed because it came out in exactly his cadence, flat and declarative, and he heard it too because something moved at the corner of his mouth. He sat. Leo immediately grabbed his face with both hands and tried to put Rex's chin in his mouth, which was his current preferred mode of greeting anyone he considered important. "Reyes made contact," Rex said through Leo's hands. She sat down across from him. "When?" "An hour ago, through an intermediary. He wants a meeting." Rex moved Leo's hands gently from his face. Leo immediately went for his collar. "He's proposing a straight exchange. He backs off, calls Tommy. Off guarantees no further action against anyone connected to me. In exchange, I give him back Elena." She heard the shape of it immediately. "He's scared. He's calculating." Rex looked at her. "There's a difference. Scared people make moves out of panic. Reyes is proposing this because the alternative, what I'm about to do to him if this drags out, is worse than the cost of retreating." He paused. "He thinks I'll take it." "Will you?" Rex looked at Leo. Leo had gotten 2 fingers of Rex's shirt collar into his fist and was leaning back against Rex's arm with the full confidence of a child who has never once considered the possibility of being dropped. "Elena came to me because she wanted out," Rex said. "Her and her daughter. She gave me everything she had on Reyes, and she asked me to help her get free." He looked back at Mia. "I don't give people back." The certainty in his voice was absolute. Not righteous, not the voice of a man performing a moral position. The voice of a man stating a fact about himself that had been established long before this conversation. "He'll come harder if you say no," she said. "Yes." "You're ready for that?" "Yes." She held his gaze. "Then why are you in here telling me this instead of in there handling it?" The question landed and sat between them, and Rex looked at her with the expression she had first seen in the conference room and had been watching open and deepen and become something larger for 5 weeks, and he said, "Because you are the reason I know what I know about Reyes, and because you have been in this house for 5 weeks making decisions that most people wouldn't make with a clear head and a full support system, let alone with a baby and nothing but nerve." He paused. "And because I wanted you to hear it from me directly before it went any further." Leo made a sound of profound agreement and grabbed Rex's thumb. "Say no to the meeting," Mia said. "I know. Make sure Elena is somewhere he will never find her." "Already done. And Tommy." She said it carefully. She had been carrying the weight of Tommy's name for 5 weeks, and the carrying was not getting lighter. "If he comes back." "He won't," Rex said. Something in his voice on those 2 words made her decide not to ask for elaboration. He stayed for another hour. Leo fell asleep in his arms. Rex did not put him down. He sat with Leo against his chest, and he talked to Mia. Not about Reyes, not about the meeting, not about any of it. He talked about a night 9 years ago when he had driven 6 hours in the wrong direction because he refused to ask for directions, and Danny had sat in the passenger seat for the entire 6 hours without saying a single word, and Rex had come to understand that this was Danny's specific and devastating form of revenge. He talked about Carla, the first year, who had reorganized his entire household and presented him with a laminated schedule and told him that if he couldn't commit to a regular dinner hour, she would be finding other employment. He had committed to the dinner hour. He had never once admitted to her that he had done it because the schedule made him feel for reasons he hadn't fully examined, like someone who lived in a home rather than a base of operations. She laughed at that, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in so long. It surprised her. Rex watched her laugh, and his face did the thing it did, the full thing unguarded, and she didn't look away. And neither did he. She reached over and took Leo from him, gently lifting him. Without waking him, she had gotten very good at this, the precision transfer, the holding of her own breath, and she laid him in the adjoining room and came back, and Rex was still sitting where she'd left him. "I meant what I said," he said, "about not leaving." She sat down. "I know you did." I'm not saying it the same way I said it the first time. He looked at her directly. The first time I said it because it was a security decision. I'm saying it now because he stopped. He pressed his lips together briefly, and for a moment she saw the 26-year-old Carla had described the one who was still green wood underneath the hardness, the one who hadn't yet learned to lock every door. I'm not good at this particular kind of sentence, he said. I know, she said. I'm saying it anyway. I know that too. He looked at her. Leo needs stability. A real one. Not a suite in someone's house. Not a temporary arrangement. He paused. But I'm not talking about Leo. I know you're not. I'm talking about Rex. She said his name quietly, and the quiet of it stopped him. I know what you're talking about. He was very still. In Clung, she had run for 8 months. She had run because running was the only language she had for survival, the only verb she had in the grammar of staying alive. She had run until she had run into a room full of dangerous men, and a baby in ducky pajamas had climbed onto the knee of the most dangerous one. And everything since then had been a slow, steady, terrifying process of learning a different verb, of learning that stopping was not the same as surrendering, that staying was not the same as being trapped. I've been standing still for 5 weeks, she said, and I'm still here. Something in Rex's face broke open entirely. Not dramatically, he was not a dramatic man, had never been one. Just quietly, the way ice breaks in spring with no sound, just a slow and irreversible shift from one state into another. He reached across and put his hand over hers on the armrest, and she turned her hand over and let his fingers close around it, and they sat like that in the quiet. Then Danny's voice came through the door. Sharp. One knock. Rex closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. He opened them. Come in, Danny. Danny opened the door. He looked at Rex. He looked at their hands. He looked at Rex again with the expression of a man who has been waiting for something for a long time and feels entitled to acknowledge its arrival, but is choosing professionalism. Reyes replied, he said, he rejected the counter and he's asking for a face-to-face. Tonight. Rex stood, his hand left hers. He was back in himself, the public self, the version built for exactly this, in the time it took him to get to his feet. But he looked at Mia before he looked at Danny, and she saw both versions of him in the same face, and she held on to that. Set it up, Rex said. Rex, I'll take you and Cole, no one else. He was already moving toward the door. And Danny, yeah, tell him to pick a public location. A beat. If Reyes wants to sit across from me, let him do it somewhere he can't control. Let him feel what it's like to be on open ground. Danny left. Rex stopped in the doorway. He turned. 3 then 2, he said. I know, she said. He looked at her one more moment. Then he was gone. She locked the door. She went to the adjoining room and lay down beside Leo and put her hand on his back and felt him breathe. She stared at the ceiling. She counted the minutes. She did not know what was happening in the city at that moment. She did not know what a meeting between Rex Malone and Marco Reyes looked like, what it sounded like, what was said and what was not said, and what was communicated in the spaces between words, in the language that men like them spoke to each other. She would not have been able to watch it even if she had been there, because there are things you can witness and things you can only wait out. She waited. Leo slept. An hour passed, then another, then 3 knocks. A pause. 2. She was on her feet before the second set finished. She crossed the room in 4 steps and opened the door, and Rex was there. Danny 2 steps behind him, and his face told her everything before he said a word, not because it was showing her relief exactly, but because it was showing her something finished. Something resolved, the particular expression of a man who has put down something he has been carrying for a very long time. It's done, he said. She searched his face. Reyes. Won't be a problem. He looked at her steadily. Elena is safe. Her daughter is safe. Tommy Hayes is out of the city. Danny's people confirmed it 20 minutes ago. He paused. It's done, Mia. She heard the words. She assembled them. She stood in the doorway of the room where her son was sleeping, and she let them land one by one, each one a weight being lifted rather than added. And she breathed in and out and in again, and felt something in her chest begin slowly to unknot. What did you say to him? She said. I said the things that needed saying. His voice was quiet, even. Not evasive, he had never been evasive with her, had given her honesty when most men in his position would have given her management. He understood the conversation, and he just walked away. Men like Reyes don't fight battles they can't win, Rex said. When you take away every path to victory, they recalculate. They don't surrender, that's not who they are. But they wait, they find other ground. He held her gaze. I've made sure there's no other ground that touches you, or Leo, or anyone in this house. From the room behind her, a sound, a small, effortful sound followed by a thump, and then a pause, and then nothing. Silence. Then Leo laughed. They both turned. She went in first. Rex right behind her, and there was Leo in the middle of the floor on his feet, both arms out for balance, wobbling with the enormous and triumphant uncertainty of someone who has just discovered that their legs are capable of something new. He had let go of the coffee table. He was standing alone. He looked at Mia. He looked at Rex. His face arranged itself into the expression of a child who has just done something remarkable and needs witnesses. He took one step, then another, then a third directly toward Rex with the absolute conviction of a child who has never once doubted where he was going. Rex went down to one knee. He put both hands out. Leo took two more steps, lurching forward in Reckham. Rex caught him, and Leo grabbed his face with both hands and said loud and clear, and completely certain the word he had been practicing on ceiling fans and mailboxes until he found the right person to give it to. Duh. Rex went very still. Mia pressed her hand over her mouth. Leo said it again because one time was never sufficient for anything that mattered. Duh. Rex looked up at Mia, and on his face, on the face of a man who had built a world out of being unmovable, who had made a reputation out of the absence of visible feeling, who had kept every door locked for so long, the hinges had gone stiff, was something so unguarded and so complete that she stopped trying to name it and just let herself look at it directly. She knelt down beside them. She put her hand on Leo's back. She put her other hand on Rex's arm. The three of them stayed on the floor like that in the quiet room while outside the city went on being the city, loud and indifferent and full of people who would never know that in a room in the east wing of an estate that didn't officially exist, something that had been broken for a long time was being carefully, imperfectly, and permanently put back together. She had run until she couldn't run anymore. She had ended up exactly where she needed to be. And the man holding her son, this complicated, hard, unexpectedly, tender man who had caught a wandering baby on his knee and never fully recovered from it, looked at her like she was the only fixed point in a world he had spent his whole life learning to navigate without one. She had spent 8 months afraid of what came next. For the first time, she wasn't. Some doors once open don't close. Some things once begun don't stop. And some people, once found, stay found because the world has a way of placing exactly the right person in exactly the wrong situation and watching what grows in the space between the danger and the grace. Rex Malone had built an empire on the principle that nothing could touch him. Leo had touched him in 30 seconds. And Mia Turner, who had walked through his gate with a duffel bag and a Lee and a 15-month-old child and more nerve than sense, had done something far more permanent. She had walked through the wall